Sunnahfollowers, protectors of the Sunnahfollowers, protectors of the Sunnah.
Ina alhamdulillah, wasalam Allah, wa rasulullah. Welcome to another session of our new series entitled Belief in Allah. As Muslims, each and every one of us are obligated to believe in Allah. And when you ask the average Muslim, do they believe in Allah? Of course, they're going to say they do. But as we know, just saying that we believe in Allah with our tongue and not following it up with actions just shows that we really don't. We have to fulfill the obligations that Allah has imposed upon us. We have to stay away from the things that Allah has forbidden for us. And we have to fulfill the obligations that Allah has imposed upon us. And let me put the PowerPoint up on the screen for tonight's discussion. And just so everybody know, when you go to my YouTube channel, this is in the series entitled Belief in Allah, of course, and this is session number 4. Let's wait for it to open up here. This laptop I'm using is so slow because it's not really for this. Okay, but inshallah, hopefully I'll have my desktop back. Okay, all right. So this is session 4. We're going to answer the question about belief and psychology and philosophy. One of the things that a lot of my critics, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that every prophet had their enemies. And the true daya, we are the inheritors of the prophets. We inherit their problems. So we have our enemies too. And one of the things that my enemies hate about me is the fact that I'm always saying that Islam is the psychology of the Muslim. Islam is the philosophy of the Muslim. We're living in the days of fitna, where you find women and men looking for fame, looking for positions of grandeur, positions of title and affluence, but they don't have the knowledge of Islam. They don't have the true understanding of this way of life. And they can be easily torn down and exposed for their ignorance of this religion. Okay. So what they do is they'll go to college and get degrees, PhDs in psychology, PhDs in philosophy, and consider themselves scholars because they have a PhD. And then they'll take these sciences and come to us and try to say that I can help you to have a beautiful, happy Muslim marriage and how to raise your children and how to have a great Muslim life based on the psychology and the philosophy. These people are frauds. Bottom line. And they hate when I say it, but I'm not going to stop saying it because that's what they are. They're frauds. Okay. If you want to know how to have the perfect marriage, first of all, perfection belongs to Allah. It don't belong to any of us. So the simple fact that they tell you that shows they're fraud and that they don't know anything about Allah or Islam. Okay, then secondly, if you want to know how to have a successful marriage, you don't need to go and pay some doctor or some psychologist to tell you that. Our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam defined for us what characterizes a successful marriage. Our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam detailed to us how to raise children, how to deal with their rebellions, how to deal with them if they tell lies and all of that. Islam is not just a religion. Islam is a beautiful way of life perfected for us by Allah and demonstrated to us by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's the psychologist. The psychologist for the Muslim is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The philosopher for the Muslim is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I'm always telling you guys that. Well, today I'm going to break it down even more. We're going to talk about Aqidah, the correct belief system versus philosophy. And what I'm teaching you, this is the understanding that the companions had as well. And they were the best of this nation. Okay, so let me put the PowerPoint back up on the screen so everybody can see. So today is session 4, Aqidah versus philosophy. First of all, philosophy deals with the exact same topics that religion deals with. Okay, it deals with discovering our origins. It deals with what is our purpose, what is the purpose of the universe. It deals with how discovering ways to attain human happiness. So philosophy, psychology, all these sciences, they may deal with the same topics that religion deal with, but they differ. They differ. They differ. And so I'm going to tell you how they differ. Well, first of all, in regards to origins, philosophy, psychology, all this type of science, this is a human endeavor. And being that it's a human endeavor, it is subject to the human potential for change, the human alternation between guidance and misguiding, the human view of perfection, the human view of straying away. So when you go to these women on the internet, these Muslim women and these Muslim men who call themselves psychologists and philosophers, you know, you go to them asking how can they help you to discover the way to attain happiness. They're going to answer you based on human perception. Human perception. Human perception. That's how it differs from religion. They'll give you their opinion, their perception of what happiness is. You go to Sister Amatullah because she wrote a book, a pamphlet on how to have a happy marriage. And you sit down with her, she's going to tell you things to do based on her perception, based on her experiences, based on her environment, not based on anything else. And because everything is based on human perception, these philosophers and these psychologists, they are not able to rid themselves of the influence of environment. So their concepts, their beliefs reflect their surroundings. So Sister Amatullah is going to tell you how to have a happy marriage based on her environment, based on her surroundings, based on her perceptions. Okay. And let's take an example. These psychologists and philosophers, one of their greatest teachers is Plato. Oh, yeah. These Muslim women, these Muslim men who go and get these PhDs and psychology and philosophy have to deal with this. Plato, he's supposed to be their great scholar of this stuff. Well, Plato, he repeats the myths that were prevalent at his time. And he even makes myths of his own as part of his ideas and beliefs, making many of his beliefs and ideas myths in and of themselves. So, for example, you know, listen to what El-Akkad said about Plato. He said this pagan, he lived in a pagan environment. And because of that, he was overwhelmed with thoughts because of the customs of his society and the effect of his surroundings. So he included in his beliefs and ideologies the idea of there being gods and demigods, which have no place in religion. Okay, so based on his environment and all of what was going on there, that's the reason why Plato accepted the idea of these intermediate gods, because he wanted to be able to explain the reason why evil, the reason why pain exists in the world. So rather than say it's because of Zeus, okay, or because it was Apollo, he'll blame it on the demigod this, the demigod that. Okay, so these intermediate gods are the ones that take care of creation. But then the demigods are the ones, that cause the evil. So that's an example as to how, philosophy and psychology and all that is just based on human perception. And their perception is determined by their environment and what social beliefs and all of that. So how does this all differ from Islamic belief? Well, the Islamic Aqidah or the Islamic belief system didn't come from people's perceptions. The Islamic belief comes from Allah, not a human. And being that it comes from Allah, it has all the divine qualities of unalterable truths whose words cannot be changed. And it also includes decisive truth, which falsehood cannot destroy. Okay, so that's the difference. Islamic belief system is based on perfection from Allah. What he determined is the best way to happiness, not the human perceptive way. Everybody understand that? Also, this philosophy and psychology, these scientific beliefs, they differ from the Islamic belief because how do they begin to study a problem? When you go to a psychologist, when you go to a philosopher, and you got a problem, and how do they study it? Well, they study the problem by looking at the human psyche. They make the human psyche the basis of how to come up with a solution to a problem. So when they speak of the understanding of knowledge, they say that sometimes it is empirical, based on experience. And sometimes it is rational, based on reason. And sometimes it's both. The human psyche. Everything, the human psyche with them. Islam is not like that. Islam is nothing at all like that. Okay. Also, philosophers, they made the empirical consist of the science. They make science the basis of their knowledge. And they claim that it's through science that they can understand things. It's through science that we can understand why a child rebels against his parents. It's through science that we understand how a man, can't be a good provider, a good supporter to his wife. It's through science that we understand why this person suffers with depression. Okay, but science doesn't hold the answers to that. Because we're all different, for one thing. Okay. And also, it doesn't have the answers because this belief system doesn't take into regard ethics. Ethics. They don't consider characteristics, the character of the human. Allah defines to us and details to us in the Quran the character of the human being. He tells us that as humans, we are criminal by nature. He created us to be attracted to the things that are bad for us. Okay? Philosophy, psychology doesn't deal with that. Philosophy, psychology doesn't take in the matters of justice, chastity, or any of that. They see these things, these characteristics of the human nature as being a minor. And these are characteristics that need evidence and support in order to be considered as not minor. And so how do psychologists and philosophers begin to pursue their evidence? They begin by using human logic. and then science and mathematics. And then they will consider knowledge of the divine. So this is how these people contradict Islam and contradict us. This is why a psychologist can't tell you anything about how to have a happy marriage. Allah defines it. And the way you're going to tell me the same thing you told her? Our lifestyles are different. Our characteristics are different. My character is not the same as his. Okay? Science can't explain these things. Allah can, though, and Allah does. Also, most philosophers speak in depth about matters of nature or instinct. And they, for example, when they discuss the stars and the planets, instead of them saying that Allah exists, they say one who must exist, but they can't really rationalize or explain how the sun exists, how the stars exist, how the planets exist, or any of that. So again, this is how philosophy, psychology, and all of those ologies contradict Aqidah. We're Muslims. And this is why I tell you guys, especially the students on my website, all my kids that grew up here, I tell them, y'all better not be going to school to get no degree in psychology. Are you out your mind? First of all, number one, you ain't going to make no money. America could care less about a so-called psychologist or philosopher. They don't make nothing. The best job you can get with a psychology degree or a philosophy degree, is to work for the state or government. And believe you me, that ain't much money, because I'm one of them. Okay? That's the best you can do. If you're going to go to school, to get a degree in engineering, get a degree as a nurse, become a nurse. That's the best profession for women, for Muslim women, is to become a nurse. Number one, not only are you making money, that's much more than a psychologist or a philosopher would make. But number two, you can get a job anywhere on this planet. In any Muslim country, non-Muslim country, even if Mars was open, they'd be hiring nurses. And not only that, but you will look at the blessings, because you're devoting your life to helping others, which Islam is all about, helping others. Look at all the good deeds you're raking up in your favor that will carry over into the grave. So I always tell the girls on my website, you better go to school to be a nurse. My granddaughter is in school to be a nurse. My daughter is a nurse. Right here. Okay. So, wasting your time for psychology and philosophy, remember, anything that comes easy ain't good. And those are easy degrees to get because there's no right or wrong answers on their quizzes. People that settle for those degrees were trying to finish college quick. Then they regret it because they can't find a job that pays no falus. Not here in los Estados Unidos, America. Okay? So be careful of this stuff, guys. Psychology bases its research on science and human psyche. It doesn't even take into consideration ethics and morality and stuff. The Quranic methodology, on the other hand, is different. It makes the call to worship Allah alone the starting point. When it comes into Islam, what is the starting point for knowledge? The starting point for knowledge is calling upon Allah. And this is why Allah told every prophet that he sent. He said, go and call the people to me. And that's why every prophet said, oh, my people, worship Allah. You will have no other God but him. And it is through this methodology that the foundation of knowledge is established, not empirical knowledge. And from this foundation, which is the knowledge of Allah, comes other kinds of knowledge, which is how to worship him, how to seek him out, how to call upon him, how to depend on him, and how to attain good objectives in life. We have a wonderful hadith, whereas Ibn Abbas was asked by a philosopher. He says, Ibn Abbas, how do you come how did you come to know about your Lord? Ibn Abbas answered him and said, whoever tries to understand his religion by analogy, because that's what philosophers and psychologists do. They use analogy. He said, whoever tries to understand his religion by analogy will remain confused throughout his life. This is a person that will be wandering and deviating away from the right way. He said, we're not like that. We learn about Allah from the way he describes himself to us. We learn about Allah through his names and his attributes that he told us of. Okay. Also, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent Mu'adh to Yemen to call the people to Allah, he told him, you will come upon people of the book. He said, advise them to first believe in Allah and to worship him alone. And only if they acknowledge that do you then call them to the obligatory duties. So that's the first thing. In Islam, Aqidah, our belief system begins with seeking knowledge of Allah, whereas the psychology and philosophy, it's all based on empirical stuff and science and what can be proven by science. And that's why if you look at some of these social media platforms, you will find a lot of Muslims with PhDs in psychology, PhDs in philosophy. They'll tell you that they don't believe in the hadith, astaghfirullah. They don't believe in the Quran fully, okay? And they're always trying to rationalize the Quran, rationalize the hadith, rationalize Islam through science. These people are kafir. They're kafir, okay? When Allah resurrects mankind, I want y'all to ponder this. We're talking about death, you know. When Allah resurrects us all, he's not going to ask us about empirical science. When Allah resurrects us, he's not going to ask us about anything about science or logic. Instead, when we're in that grave, he's going to ask us about him and his prophets. And when he resurrects us, he's going to ask us the same as well. So all this stuff about the scientific philosophy of nature, the analogy of the sun and the moon, that ain't going to help you at all when you're in that grave. And it definitely ain't going to help you on the day of judgment. Listen to what Allah says in the interpretation, the meaning. Every time a group is thrown into the hellfire, they will be asked, did not a warner come to you? And they will say, yes, a person did come to us to warn us, but we didn't believe in him. Understand, guys, Allah will never send anyone to hell unless they had a warner. But these people will then say, if we only listened and used our intelligence, if we only listened to that warner and used our intelligence, then we wouldn't be amongst the people of hell. Okay, so again, guys, we need to focus on Aqidah. We need to focus on what's going to get us through the tests and the trials of the life of this world. And Allah defined those things to us. And then we need to focus on getting through that questioning of the grave, getting through the trials of the grave, and then in turn being resurrected, you know, and in good standing with Allah. Okay. Also, just as the call to worship Allah is the starting point in the Quran's methodology, and knowledge of Allah is the basis from which stem all other kinds of knowledge, the final point, again, is to worship Allah. As Allah says in the interpretation of meaning, and if you, O Muhammad, ask them, who has created the heavens and the earth? They will say, who is the Lord of the seven heavens? Who is the Lord of the throne? They will say, Allah. Okay, so yeah, as Muslims, we are called to worship Allah. We are called to believe in him alone. We are called to understand that everything that happens in this world, good and bad, happens as a result of his decree. But the philosophers, they don't believe in this, guys. Everything is about, the human psyche. So this is why you will find me, Layla Nashiba, speaking out against these people who perpetrate Islam, pretending to be scholars and die just because they got a PhD in science. I could care less about your scientific degree, okay? Especially if it's philosophy or psychology. You're just telling me that you chose to drop out of school early because you couldn't do the hard work. Okay, you ain't getting paid no money, not here in America. Working in a nursing home would have been better. At least they get overtime. They make more than you. Hello, they can make as much as they want. Overtime is rampant in healthcare. Okay, so this is why you guys will find me speaking out against that, because their belief system totally contradicts the Quran. They don't believe in Allah. They don't believe in nothing that we believe in as Muslims. And why would a Muslim even want to go to school for that? How can you tell me how to have a happy marriage when you don't even know how to have a happy marriage for yourself? You're basing everything on human psyche. How can you tell me how to raise my children perfectly when you can't even guarantee that you can raise your own children perfectly? Because everything is the qadr of Allah. These people don't think about the qadr, the choices we make. So I'm going to stop right here for today. Inshallah, tomorrow, I'm going to speak more about Aqidah, and I'm going to give you a brief little quiz on this. And for those of you who are listening, please tell your children, if you got kids about to graduate from high school, don't waste their time with thinking of getting a degree in anyology. Unless now social work is different. If they want to get a degree in sociology so they can become a social worker, that's different. Because there you can get good jobs working as a social worker, a probation officer, that type of stuff is good. But I'm talking about psychology degree, philosophy degree. Please tell your kids don't waste their time with that garbage. Go to be a nurse, be a social worker. Social workers are needed. They work for the city and the state, and they make a pretty good income. Okay. But leave that psychologist and that crap alone. And don't be duped by these women with these beautiful voices who smile on the internet and tell you, I wrote a pamphlet on how to have a happy marriage. How can she guarantee a happy marriage for herself? Most of them divorced anyway. Hello. All right, I'm going to stop right here. If you guys have any questions or comments, inshallah, you can ask them. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Any questions or comments?